Hello, everybody. Dr. Meri Crouley for Now is the Time. Happy New Year. I'm so excited for what God is going to do and is doing this year. On today's program, we have Larry Ballard, who actually is the author of Liberty Crusade and a new book that recently has come out, Liberty Crusade Restored Republic. And we're going to be talking today about the wealth transfer and all the geopolitical events we're seeing around the world, including Venezuela, Iran, Cuba, and so much more do we have to talk about today. But before we do that, today's program is sponsored by the Root Brands, including the product called Zero In. Let's roll that commercial, please.
Get all of your cylinders firing at full force with Zero In. A backlog of work, lack of concentration, insufficient energy, high stress levels. We've all had days like this, and just a healthy diet and exercise don't seem enough to restore vitality. But nature offers the best sources of energy, and at Root, we found a way to make the most of them and to create a unique and powerful nutraceutical product. Thanks to Zero In's carefully selected and combined ingredient formula, your physical and most especially cognitive performance will be dramatically enhanced. This combination of ingredients, including vitamin D, coffee plant leaves extract, velvet bean seed powder, pine bark extract, and turmeric root extract, is especially designed to increase cognitive function and mental acuity while clearing your mind and providing greater focus. Additional benefits include improved immune system, improved dopamine and serotonin balance, more restful sleep, improved mood, reduced stress, and improved physical performance. Awaken your mind and your body. Focus your brain naturally.
Yes, that product, in fact, is amazing. It's called Zero In, but it's part of the Trinity pack, which the Root brand started. I interviewed Dr. Christina Rom, about 4 years ago, and she came out with this formulation called Clean Slate. And Clean Slate actually pulls all the bad toxins and graphene oxide out, but puts in the trace minerals you need, then restore. And lastly, Zero In, which helps with your cognitive function. Many people, of course, had long COVID. They had a lot of problems mentally. This will really help clarity. Many athletes take it, but I take it every day. It's called Zero In, helps with dopamine and cognitive function in your brain. Go to therootbrands.com/. Now is the time. You have to set up your own affiliate link. It's free, but then you'll actually get 15% off of anybody that you refer it to. So please get it today. I started with Trinity Pack, but I get Clean Slate, Restore, and Zero In. Is amazing products. So anyway, Larry, good having you on the program today. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Same to you.
Well, I know you've been battling a bug. I was battling a bug, but you know what? We told the bug to bug out, and it's gone.
Right.
Going. So anyway, Larry, good to have you on. There's so many exciting things that we've been seeing, including what happened in Venezuela on January 2nd. People woke up and heard about Venezuela and heard about Maduro being taken, and literally the whole city was cheering. I mean, I think people would just get chills listening to this. But we're going to be talking about a number of things, including Venezuela and Iran. But you have basically an amazing show today about the wealth transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let's start with what you put together for us today.
All right, let's go to the first slide. So let me give you an overview before I start talking about the first slide. This is kind of a worldwide global review of everything for, say, the last month. And there's more that's happened in the last month that probably happened in the last 5 years. So don't think that this is not going to be a lot of stuff, because there's a world of things happening. But what I want you to think about is it's going to be scary. There's all kinds of stuff. But I want you to understand that God's got your back, that all of this is basically being orchestrated by God. It's triggering, these events are triggering both the wealth transfer and the reset. And so God's harvest of souls is right around the corner. So I've got two slides that are prophecies from Kim Clement, and I want to just read them to you word for word. And then that'll set the stage for the fact that you don't need to be afraid. God's got this. So on June the 14th, 2014, Kim Clement made the following prophecy. He said, a rendering is coming in the fall. Many will fall and many will rise. Isn't that what you're seeing in the news every day right now? And many will rise from the dust. But remember, when these tremors and these tumultuous moments happen, what? I will make it so that the fall can do its work where? In America. So everything that's happening is basically restoring America and getting ready for the harvest of souls within our country. And I would say freedom around the world. Let's go to the next slide. And we've got another quote from Kim Clement. And people have been thinking that he missed these two prophecies, but it wasn't time. They weren't looking at the telltales within the happenings of the news, but now they're all right there. So this is also from June the 14th, 2014. It says, winter will say, I will make them happy. And then he goes on to say, I have chosen each season to manifest something. My will shall be done. So this is the prophecy about Christmas, hypnotic November and Christmas. And so here's my interpretation of that. Basically, he went on to say in another prophecy that the whole financial system was going to come down with a small stone. And that stone is silver. And so what has happened is we've had a silver squeeze, and that has, in my opinion, triggered the transfer of wealth. And let me tell you why. Now, we're going to get into this in more detail in the latter half of this presentation. But basically, for those of you who bought gold, who bought silver, who have put seed in the ground, who bought XRP, who've invested in the currencies and the dinar and the dinar and the dong, you're already rich. You're already rich. It's already coming. Silver has just absolutely gone through the absolute roof, and so is gold. So the wealth transfer has triggered, and it really happened right at Christmas time. So God delivered just like he said it was going to deliver through his prophet Kim Clement. Now,
well, and also, if you look back at 2014, that was 12 years ago, and 12 is the number of government and change. So we're seeing the great change happening. And just like when Venezuela, I think the lights went out for a certain length of time because they had to go in there and capture Maduro, and they had to take him by surprise. And so it was probably very fearful at first when those lights went out. But then, of course, the next morning, everybody was cheering because they heard that Maduro had been captured, and basically Venezuela, even though there's going to be probably some weeks ahead of some tumultuous times, but pretty much freed from a dictator. So it's exciting to see what God is doing.
Well, there's a coup in process there right now. So let's go to the next slide. And I've just given you a series of pictures because we're going to cover the world right here on this one slide. So basically, Maduro has fallen. But what's happening right now is his vice president was sworn in as the president. And this is my opinion. My opinion is that based on everything I've done to follow all of the news breaking stories, is that the people who were really in control, along with Maduro, were the Cubans. The Cubans were the ones who were there protecting him. And so right now it looks as if we're having a coup where they're going to take out the new president, who was until a couple of days ago the vice president, and the people are going to get rid of her because they don't want anything associated with Maduro. So basically that's in the news right now today. And just in case you really haven't put together what all the reasons were for why we're there, it's there's several things, and I'll touch on them. Basically, 3 oil companies, U.S. oil firms, developed that oil field in Venezuela, and Trump has said point blank, we're taking it back. And then there's the drugs that come out, of all the people who have been killed from the drugs that have come out of there for over a decade. And that's a war. And then they were a conduit to bring people up to the United States to cross our borders as illegal immigrants. But here's the really big story. The really big story is that they stole the election through Smartmatic, and then Trump has been saying all along, we've got it all, we've got it all, we've got the whistleblowers, we've got everything we need. Well, he needed Maduro, and he needed him alive, and now he's got him. And we're about to find out that the election in the United States was stolen, and in 71 other countries. And what does that do? That basically pulls that plug and drains the swamp. And in very short order, over the next 2 or 3 months, we're going to see massive amounts of resignations in the government in the United States, in the banking industry, in the corporations, and we're going to see the entire swamp be drained. And that's setting the stage for the transfer of wealth from the wicked to the righteous, and that's setting stage for God to come in with this harvest of souls. Let me stop there, Mary, and let you make comments before we go on.
Well, and it's just like I've interviewed Juan O'Savin many times, and he always says that 2020, it's not over yet. And every ha ha, he always laughs. I love that laugh at the end. But I was listening to Nino Rodriguez, and he was saying that, Juan has been right all along about a lot of these things. And Juan is just a person, an individual, but I believe he has high-level intel, as well as many other people that I've interviewed on this program, including you, Larry, where God came to you back in the late 60s and said there was going to be some issues coming up in the future, and that not to be afraid. That's what your book, Liberty Crusade, is about, which we'll get in at the very end. But everything that God told you happened, he told you many years ago, but it's taken years to get us into this position for this great transfer of wealth that I believe is at the door. And why it's here is actually so that we can take back these 7 mountains and restore the world as it was supposed to be, as God intended it and created it to be. So I'm excited about the show today. So let's continue on.
Well, let's go on with some of the late breaking news. Maybe you haven't been seeing this, but if you follow Tutsi, who's an Iranian guy, an exile, he's been going every day over the events that are happening in Iran, and the people have revolted into the streets, and they basically just about got the government to the point where it's utterly collapsed. They've been burning the vehicles of the Republican guards. They've been burning their headquarters, and basically the entire country is just about collapsed. But the Ayatollah has fled somewhere west. We don't know where, but he's not been captured. He's still on the move, and he's still threatening. So what did Trump do? Trump came on and said very briefly, it was on when he was asked a question when he was on Air Force One, and he sent him a message, and he said, if you start killing the people in the streets, I'm locked and loaded, and America will come for you. And so what's been happening in the last 48 hours, it turns out that our Air Force has been flying over to Britain to stage, and then on to Germany, and is positioned where, if necessary, we can intervene in Iran. And let's go on down to, let me let you comment on that before we go to the Western Hemisphere, because that's a huge story. There's a lot to talk about.
And there's so many Christians now in Iran. I have several of my friends that actually had been this incredible story of Cameron Yarari that literally is a major influencer over there. And Christianity is growing at an exponential rate. So God is restoring and recapturing these countries for the kingdom. So it's just so exciting. So go ahead.
Now, when we go to the Western Hemisphere, if you've been following me, I've done complete shows on this. Basically, there's a complete geopolitical shift of power happening in the world. And basically, power as manufacturing leaves China, power is being spread out around Asia. And so Asia is going to basically have a very big facelift, and there's going to be a lot of people moved up from poverty into the middle class. What that's going to do in reference to America is it's going to mean that America, that only has about 350 million people, has the largest domestic market in the world. But the market in Asia is going to grow dramatically. So now, if America is going to continue to be, it's not going to be the sole leader of the world. As we emerge from this collapse, from this event that God has orchestrated, we're going to have a multipolar world. And it's probably going to be, in my opinion, America will be the strongest. And then I think it'll be China, and I think it'll be Russia. And every indication I have from the research that I've done is that Europe is faltering very, very badly. So I think those are going to be the ones. But we need to focus on what Donald Trump is doing. And for those who don't follow history, we're basically reenacting the Monroe Doctrine, which said America is the hemispheric leader in the Western Hemisphere, and we need to step up, and we need to act like that leader. So as you look at that map, I'm going to show you the significance of what Donald Trump is doing. You look over to the left, and you see the 50th state of the United States. You see Alaska. That's our buffer for the maritime route between Russia and America. We need to have that. You go over to the other side and you got Greenland. We need to have Greenland. And just the other day he said Greenland should be a part of America, and he's going to push for that very hard. And that's in order to guard the northern route over to Europe and over to Asia. And then we go to a nation that a lot of people think, oh boy, Canada's our super duper friend. Not so, folks. Not so. We fought a war in order to be able to break away from the British control. They didn't. So to this very day, Canada is under Britain. And what's happening there? I don't know how it's going to turn out, but 6 provinces have gotten together and they've said to Ottawa, we're very, very unhappy with what you've done. You take the assets from our natural resources and you transport them to Ottawa and you won't listen to us. And so they're now passing referendums around trying to get a vote to basically join the United States as the 51st through 56th states. It may just be leverage against Ottawa, or maybe it will happen. After all, if you look back, it took some time, but Britain got out from under the EU, right? So these nations might get out, but in any event, things are changing. And what started all that was when Alberta got fed up and they did a pipeline deal behind Ottawa's back with the United States. And then all the rest of the Western provinces says, whoa, wait a minute. If they can do it, we can do it. And so now there's a huge movement to join with America. And if America and Canada were to join, that's absolutely huge because we have technology that they need. They have resources that we need. It would be a wonderful symbiotic relationship. Then let's go down to the
well, and I just want to interject in that. You know, I've interviewed Archer Pulowski many times, who is the Canadian pastor that's been in prison. You know, his video went viral when they tried to shut his church down on, Easter weekend. And he said, "Get out, you Nazis." So unbelievable story about Archer. But God had spoken to me back in, I think, 2018 that Canada was going to crown America. I don't know what that meant, but if they were to join America, that would literally mean they're over us, and the realms of it would look like a crown. And they always say, of course, England, they're under the crown. So I believe that God is going to take back that crown, and they're going to be, I believe they're going to be coming back in alliance with America. And a lot of those people that have been so under so much trials and persecution are going to be set free. So including Pastor Archer Pulowski, which we need to continue to pray for him and his family. So go on, Larry.
That's exactly what I'm alluding to. There have been several prophecies that say from current day prophets that Canada is going to fall and join us. Now let's go down to the southern part or southern border. We all know what happened down there, but let's go all the way down to South America and come up to South America through Latin America into Mexico. If it weren't for collusion with our government on all of those nations, we wouldn't have had the illegal immigrant crisis that we had, because they had to have cooperation to go through nation to nation to nation to nation, and finally to cross through Mexico into the American border. So we, America, since Carter, at least since Carter, maybe before, have set back and done nothing with our neighbors to the south, and their economies have been very poor. And so what do? They turn to drug, and basically the governments have been taken over by cartels. So now what's happening? Trump has said, he said all the drug cartels are now considered terrorist organizations, which gives him the right to attack them anywhere. And so here's what I think he's got lined up. We talked about Alaska and Greenland as being portals that we need to have for transportation. As we go down to Latin America, we basically have to have the Panama Canal, but let's start with Mexico. So Mexico now is cooperating, but under coercion, and we have about 20,000 troops on the border, and the illegal immigration has stopped. And we need to note, with what's going on right now with the silver decrees, that Mexico has, I think, is either the first or second largest producer of silver. So we need to have some cooperation with that nation because we need silver. But let's go down to South America now. And we all know what's been happening in Venezuela. We talked about that. But Trump has been giving signals elsewhere as well. And he's saying to Colombia, the president of Colombia tried to make an argument the other day. He said, well, I don't know what you people are making such a big deal about us having cocaine and shipping it to the United States. You've got all these people who drink alcohol in America. What's the difference between cocaine and alcohol? Well, there's a big difference. So basically, Trump is saying, Colombia, you might be in for a surprise. And what he's done down in Argentina is another threshold. We've got to have all of the seaways controlled. So he just basically did a currency swap with Argentina, putting us on good ground with them. So now we have all three of those, four actually, of those seaways that are under our control, that we have assured our access to them. And I skipped one going down. There's a little bitty dot on the Atlantic side over there, and that is Cuba. And so what did Trump just say about Cuba? I don't think we're going to have to do anything with them because they've been propped up by Venezuelan oil, and they're in the midst of collapsing, just like Iran's in the midst of collapsing. So what are we doing? We're seeing that God is keeping his promise. Everything that can shake will be shaken. There will be falls in the fall and rises in the fall, and that is exactly what is happening. And we're going to get in partnership with our neighbor to the north and all of our neighbors to the south, and we're going to see to it that they get legitimate governments, and we're going to see to it that America rises up and gets out from under its debt, and we help all these nations, and we basically see them as our brothers. And here's what we have to do, and I hope Trump is planning on this. We have to stop Western hegemony. We have to, if we go in, for example, and take the oil wells in Venezuela, my honest, sincere hope is that we give them a fair deal, that we don't just go in there and take the oil and give them pennies on the dollar. I hope we give them enough money that they can get wealthy like Saudi Arabia did in the U.S. petrodollar deal. So at any rate, that's the Western Hemisphere. And the other two.
Well, Larry, I used to know several people from Venezuela. It used to be one of the wealthiest countries in the world. I mean, it was very lush. It was very beautiful place, and beautiful women, beautiful people. When they came in, it's a third world country. I mean, it's unbelievable how bad it got so quickly. And that's what they wanted to do here in America. They wanted to do that here. So, I mean, we were this close. I mean, we're so close to having our country fall. And it's only because of prayer, the people rising up, standing up, speaking up, and shows like mine, yours, many others around the world globally that have put out true news instead of fake news, that have literally given people the power and the strength to say, we're going to speak up. We're not going to just lay back here. We're not just going to, like Klaus Schwab says, you'll own nothing and be happy. No, we're going to fight against that. Just like God told me, we won't shut up until you open up, open the heavens. So we're opening the heavens through our prayer and going into these different parts of the country. At least I am. We've got our 8th Open the Heavens coming up, you guys, in Las Vegas, coming up in May. So keep your eyes and ears tuned to that. We'll be letting you know the exact place and venue, which we're solidifying this week. So continue on, Larry.
All right. Well, that takes us up to the upper right-hand corner, and that takes us to the Ukraine-Russian war and to events in that hemisphere. And things are shaking everywhere. So let me give you a little bit of the background on that. Trump thought that war would be able to be ended easily, but he's put 8 other countries' wars to breast, and certainly deserves the Peace Prize, but we'll see if they give it to him. But here's what's happening. He's now making a play to bring that war to an end. He's basically embargoed all of the oil coming from Venezuela, so it's not getting over to China. And he's gone to the EU and he's gone to India and said, I want to make an agreement where you're not going to sell any oil to Russia. Now, let me take you back in history and understand the significance of that and how that could weigh heavily on ending this war. When Russia originally fell in 1980, basically they had to cap off their oil wells because they had no money to run them, and they're out in the cold sub-zero weather in Siberia. And what happens when you cap a well, basically the vacuum that allows that well to keep pumping is broken, and it takes forever to get it back up to production. So it took almost 10 years for Russia to get their oil production back up to where it had been. And all the nations of the world had to chip in because we needed that oil. So right now, what Trump is doing with the war in Iraq, in Ukraine and Russia, is he's putting Putin in a position where there's nobody to sell his oil to. And so what happens is that he has to store it. And as he stores it, if he runs out of capacity, then they have to shut the wells down, and then they're right back to where they were in 1980. I don't think Putin is going to let that happen, but I think that Trump is pressuring him with oil. So we're getting squeezed with silver. We're squeezing Russia with oil. There's all kinds of stuff happening. And then China, of course, is threatening to attack Taiwan to get control of semiconductors. So what we're seeing is a total global geopolitical shift of power, a power vacuum where America is no longer the sole superpower of the world, but it's shared with at least two other nations, maybe three. So that's kind of the wrap up for the global picture. And with that, I'll let you make a comment and we'll move on.
Well, I just think that what we're seeing in this geopolitical overview is that the Lord is like they say Trump plays 5D chess. Well, God is the one who sits in the heavens and he laughs, thinking that these, elites and bloodline families and how they've made their wealth through, sex trafficking and organ trafficking and labor trafficking and all these different things. And God is saying the last laugh will be on me. And we're going to see the kingdoms of this world now become the kingdoms of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. It's very exciting, Larry, what's going on. Everybody that's listening. So it's exciting.
Well, that takes us right to the next slide. So this is my analysis from I'm not a prophet, but I get words from God occasionally when it's important. And regarding this, he gave me one all the way back in 68. So I've been looking for this to happen. And that is that the kingdoms of man are going to fall. So what is happening right now is the silver market has collapsed. We've now separated paper silver from real silver, and now we're understanding that silver is one of the two most important minerals in the world. It's oil and silver. And I guess if you want to know the most important one, it's water. But basically what's happening is the kingdoms of man are going to fall. That silver collapse is going to collapse banks around the world. And that's what's going to basically trigger all these changes. Because like you were saying, the mountains, once you lose control of the money, once you lose control of the manufacturing, you lose control of the spheres of influence. And so communism is going to fall because it's oppressive. And the people eventually stand up, just like they're doing in Venezuela, just like they're doing in Iran. And capitalism is going to fall because capitalism breeds greed and waste, and resources are squandered. And the global financial leaders saying, you useless eaters, we have to get your population down to between 500,000 and 500 million and a billion, because you're squandering all of what we consider to be our natural resources. And so that's where we're at. They're trying to basically kill us. I mean, look at COVID, look at what they do with our medicines. And what this really uncovers is that we're in a shift that's going to force on the world deglobalization and de-dollarization. So if you go to the next slide, we'll get into that, and then I'll be quietly just let you comment. But basically, this is what's happening. Deglobalization, that started well over a year ago, when basically, actually it started with COVID, where basically manufacturing is being stripped away from China. They're having massive collapses. They've got a lot of uneasiness, and we could wake up within who knows when and find that there's a coup that's happening in China. Basically, the housing market is utterly collapsed. The retail market has collapsed. People have lost their retirement, and the nation is in pretty much chaos. And then you're going down, and we're going to have de-dollarization, because we're so in debt because we abused the ability to print money, but we also used the money as a weapon against other nations, particularly with what we did with Russia, where we basically took billions of their dollars and said, you can't have access to it. So the world doesn't want to be controlled by the United States. They don't want to be controlled by China. They don't want to be controlled by anybody. All nations for my lifetime has been controlled by the global financial elite banking monsters. And now all the nations of the world are standing up and saying, we want to have sovereign governments, sovereign governments. So let me stop here and see if you have something to add on anything I've said here.
Well, no, I don't. Continue.
All right. So let's go on down. And this is my interpretation of where we're headed. We're headed right into God's new economic system. And when that happens, the fiat currencies are gone. And what does God say? He says, the gold and the silver is mine. The cattle on 1,000 hills are mine. All the natural resources of the world are his. We're going to go to a new economic system when we get out from under capitalism and get out from the communism that's based on God's economic system, which is what? All the vast mineral resources that he put on this planet to take care of us. We live in a world of absolute abundance, but we've been held in slavery because those assets have been either held from us or priced so high that we couldn't afford them. So here's my interpretation of what's coming. We're going to have, when all this settles, this is probably a year or 2 years out, but over the bottom left-hand side, these are the things that are going to happen. We're going to have a completely new economic system. And it just so happens that there's a foreshadow for that. It was based upon America when we had a financial bankruptcy following the Civil War, and we developed the Transcontinental Railroad. We innovated the Industrial Revolution, the assembly line, the automobile, the steam engine, all of that, and we shared it with the world. So what's coming now is product longevity versus planned obsolescence. And as simple as that statement is, what it means is that we make products today that are designed to have a limited shelf life, and that squanders and wastes all those valuable resources. But if we can make products that'll last a lifetime and that are modular, that can be easily repaired. We can make things that are reusable, and that will reduce the amount of waste that we have of the Lord's natural resources gigantically. It's going to change the world. It's going to lead to the regreening of the entire planet, and it's going to lead to economic prosperity for everybody on this planet. We're not going to have the poverty that we have now. And then next we go on. So basically that new economic system, that kingdom system that America was used as the foreshadow, is going to be brought in probably over a couple of years, and we'll have an economy that shares resources and shares technology, and we'll move into planetary stewardship. And so here I want to stop, and I've got a whole series of programs that are around this last bullet point, planetary stewardship. I'm going to talk about just one little aspect of it. So right now, I think people would probably agree and be aware that our oceans are dying. We've overfished them, and we've got massive amounts of plastic floating around in the ocean, and those fish see those little colored specks, and they think it's food, they eat it, and it kills them. So basically, we way back developed plastic, the forever product that doesn't biodegrade, and it's made from oil, and it's made from natural gas. Well, guess what? A few years later, they came out another product that solved all the crises that we've been working with oil. It's hemp. And they lobbied and got hemp so that it couldn't be sold. And basically, here's what you need to know. The original Model T Fords, their fenders and their shells were made of hemp. And I've seen demonstrations where they take a car with a plastic bottle, with a metal bottle, with a hemp body, hit them with a sledgehammer, one dents, the other cracks, and the hemp just goes and comes right back out again. It can be used for packaging. It can be used for anything that oil can be used for. It can be used to make cardboard packages, to make cellophane, clear cellophane, just like you make from oil, to make a milk carton to hold your milk. Just looks just like the regular plastic, except the key is it's biodegradable. There's all kinds of things like that are going to come. God is going to give us stewardship because he wants us to regreen this planet that we have so abused. So I'm going to be doing a whole series on all kinds of things like that. So let's go to the other side, and we'll real quickly see what happens when we get out of this fiat system. We get out of slavery. That's what God is doing. This is the moment at which we are crossing the Red Sea, and we are being freed. And when this financial system, this fiat system collapses, and we go on God's system, here it is. It's the end of inflation, the end of deflation, the end of wage suppression, the end of the stock market manipulation, the end of boom bust cycles that they inflict upon us, the end of national and consumer debt, the end of poverty and division, and the end of global conflicts. Because it was Eisenhower who said, is there any man, any woman, any child that doesn't understand the principal cause of wars is gross economic disparity between nations? All of that is going to go away. The future could not look brighter. That was a lot. So let me stop and let you make a comment or two before we go on.
Well, and Larry, what I was hearing as you were talking, it's very similar to what happened with Joseph in the Old Testament when he was sold into slavery by his brothers. But God used that time of slavery when he was in the prison to prepare him for the coming years when he was eventually released and became the right-hand man of Pharaoh. And he was given the wisdom to have the 7 years of plenty for the 7 years of famine that were going to come. I believe it's the reverse right now, that God has brought us through the years of famine where the enemy tried to, with this elite banker systems and the bloodline families and all this, tried to make us slaves. But because the people rose up and we prayed, as I mentioned before, we're seeing the overthrow of the economic systems of the enemy. That's the first thing Jesus did. Remember, when he came into the temple, he took his whip and he overthrew the money changers. And
Yep.
so people think Jesus was just some meek little, like, mild mannered guy. No, Jesus was, meek is not weak. He was a man that would be willing to do whatever it took. So I believe we're in that time right now that we're going to see these overthrowing of these systems, and that the people of God will now come in to establish the kingdom philosophies and identities of the cross and of Christ. So it's an exciting time, everyone.
So as you said, he overturned the silver, the money changers' tables, and that's exactly what happened on Christmas. Basically, that began the transfer of wealth, because in the last couple of months, silver has gone from, I don't know what it was 3 or 4 months ago, about 1,800, I think, up to over 4,000 on its way. Donald Trump says he's going to at some point step in and make it $20,000, and silver's just gone skyrocketing. I mean, so basically that's the transfer of wealth that's happening. Let's go to the next slide and we'll dig a little deeper into the tangible aspects of what's happening. The banks are going to fall, at least a large number of them. We have to take the money away from the global financial elite. He who controls the money controls all the spheres of influence. And when we get into another slide, you'll see just how significant the squeeze that they've done on silver is going to be. And basically, this is something I want you to be looking forward to. The Defense Protection Act has been initiated by Donald Trump, and that's going to give him a lot of power. And we might see that as we go through this, for those who are in silver, you're going to need to follow this. We'll talk about this in more detail in another slide, but there's going to probably become a time when they're going to do what they did in 1934. In 1933, they took our gold. Every indication I have is that they're not going to take that right now. But they may, based upon the fact of that we have supposedly a shortage of silver, they may, using the Production Defense Act, and through legislation, not through outright confiscation, but they may make it so that private citizens can't hold silver anymore. But anyway, the implications of that is this. I recognize that silver is a critical mineral. So it's going to burn free, not tethered to the money anymore. And here's the decision that the Elon Musk of this world have to make, and the people, the Amazons and so forth. If we need silver in order to keep our doors open, to keep our businesses going, what are we willing to pay? We're willing to pay a lot. And if our country needs silver in order to have national security so we can keep our military running, there's no telling where silver is going to go. Silver is going to create the wealth transfer, and it's going to trigger and have a lot to do with basically all the things that we've just seen. Now, if we'll go to the next slide, you'll see a number, $1.3 trillion. That's what's basically at stake here with what's happening with this silver. And that's enough to collapse a lot of banks. And when they collapse, then now we go into God's nuke system.
Well, Larry, in regards to that, I was listening to a program the other day that most of these banks have literally leveraged they don't have this money in the bank. When people make a deposit or do whatever, they loan out that money or whatever to other people. And they've done that with the silver. Explain that a little bit, why these banks are going to collapse, because they've leveraged so much that they don't really have the money in their institutions, right, to cover the cost of people making a run on the bank. Explain that just briefly.
It's called the fractional reserve banking system. And if you want to do another show next week, I queued up a show on that, thinking that was relevant to what was happening here. So basically, let's go back. What we have with the fractional reserve banking system is a system where, just like the Fed prints money out of nowhere, the banks do the same thing. So let's say you borrow $1,000 from a bank. You deposit $1,000. They can loan 90% of that out. And then they can loan 90% of the 900 and 90% of again and again. And so that $1,000 that you put in the bank may end up to be $20,000 or $30,000, and they're making interest on that. And you're getting maybe on your savings account 0.5%. And if it's a personal loan, they're getting about 10%. If it's a credit card, they might be making then 20 or 30%. But we had a situation happen. If you go back to '08 and if you go back to COVID, this will explain what happened. When we got to COVID, they said, this is such a crisis that banks, you're supposed to hold 10% in reserve. That's what I've been talking about with the fractional banking system. But we're going to waive that. So you don't have to hold anything because this is a crisis. And a lot of banks have just kept that. They don't have any reserves. And so basically on the silver side, the same thing happens. We sell silver contracts, paper contracts, over and over and over, and we don't have the physical silver. So if more people demand, instead of payment, financial payment, if they demand delivery of silver, we don't have it. And that's what's brought us into this crisis. So I've got an entire hour-long show queued up if you want to do that next week. But that's just kind of the overview at the high level of what you're talking about. And then what that does basically is when they don't have the money, and they default, which is what's going to happen about 3 months from now, is the COMEX is going to declare force majeure, and they're not going to deliver silver. They don't have it, so they're going to have to pay out on contracts that were led at maybe $60 or $70, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $150 per ounce for a huge quantity of silver. That's going to collapse banks, and when that collapses banks, then economic systems falter and fall. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. No, it does. It does. Go ahead.
So to wrap this up, we're going to have bank closures. We're going to have limited exporting of silver. So what all the nations of the world are saying now, hey, silver finally became a strategically significant mineral. And so we're going to bring it all in as much as we can into our borders, and then we're not going to export it. So how this silver squeeze started was that China had silver in vaults all over the world, and they have paper contracts? No. So they don't mess with paper contracts. They have hard assets. They had reserves where they just picked up the telephone and said, hey, we're sending a truck over. All the silver that has our name on it, put it in a truck. We're shipping it back to China. And when they got it back, they said, we're going to, on January the 1st, see, everything happened right there at Christmas and the beginning of the year. We're going to put exports restrictions on the silver. Mexico did it. China did it. Saudi Arabia is doing it. We're doing it. Everybody now realizes you cannot run a technological society if you don't have silver. And so now the silver squeeze is on, and the silver squeeze is what is effectively going to cause the collapse of all the nations around the world. So I guess that's all I have to say on this, but you watch. It's gonna trigger bank failures, and it's much bigger, much bigger than even 29, bigger than '08, because every other collapse we've ever had was based upon the collapse of one of the three engines of the economy. So in 29 it was the stock market, in '08 it was stocks, and usually the bonds are the backdrop for one of those. They're the basically the safety net. But this collapse is going to be all three. The stock market's going to go. The real estate market's going to go, and the bond market's going to go all at one time. So this is going to be God's reset. He's bringing all the kingdoms of man down, and he's going to implement his new economic system. Comments, Meri?
No, I think we're going to see it happen quickly. And just like you said earlier, we can't be afraid. We just have to trust in the Lord with all of our heart, and not lean to our own understanding. And that the Lord is the one that's going to turn this around. And as we said, the kingdoms of this world will now become the kingdoms of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So that's what we have to trust in. So continue on, Larry.
Well, let's go to the next slide. And we're in what I call a doom loop. A technological society, as I said, cannot function without silver. There's no substance in the world that has the connectivity and all the attributes that silver has. So, well, gold actually has it, but it's too expensive to use at least currently in massive amounts of manufacturing. So here's what's happening. This is the magnitude of the problem. This first line, 2016, silver production peaked. It peaked. And what happened is declined 7% since then. And listen to this next line. Estimates are that by 2030, that's not that far away, right? That the supply of silver will only be 62 to 70% of global demand. That means that somebody out there is going to have to lose their businesses. They're going to have to shut down. The technological innovations that Trump wanted to release are not going to happen. Well, that's what they're saying, but don't worry, that's not going to be the case. We're going to wake up, and what we're going to say to the world is this: Donald Trump is going to come against the Green New Deal technologies. He's going to come against the batteries for the EVs. He's going to come against the solar panels and the windmills. And who is the number one manufacturer of all of those? China. And what we're going to find out is that if you put all of those technologies together, they represent over 50% of all the consumption of silver in the entire planet. So if we go to the new technologies that Trump has arranged to be given us when he, in his first term, got the Chevron decision passed and gives us access to 5,915 patents, basically, we're going to be able to say, we're getting rid of all of those green scam technologies. And just like that, we have 50% more silver. Bam. That's what's coming. The world is going to go through a technological revolution, the likes of which you have, and we're going to stop squandering God's natural resources. Shall we go on to the next slide?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So we're still on the Green New Deal. And right there it says Trump mocks the Green New Deal in Vegas. And green energy is a farce. So here's what's happened. Here's the issues that relate to it. Green energy is costly and inefficient. So here's a little fact that most of you don't know. Do you know that Israel has invented a very, very efficient solar panel? Can't get it on the market. Any solar panel above 30% efficiency, they won't let it on the market. And then you probably don't know that's connected to the grid. Remember that. And those batteries in those cars, you got to charge them in the grid, right? Everything's connecting to the grid. So the whole lie of zero carbon emissions through the green energy revolution is a lie from the pit of hell. Basically, we're still tied to the government and to the grid and to carbon production. So what's going to happen is, I lost my place here. Let's go on. I'm going to read this. So basically, the Green New Deal consumes massive amounts of silver that we need for other critical applications. So as we get out of these, so let's go back to those solar panels. So they produce their electricity at 30% efficiency, but by the time that electricity gets to your home, there's been a 60% degradation in the lines. And so they are the most costly form of energy that we've ever had. Those solar panels are subject to being destroyed by the hundreds of thousands from storms with all the weather events that we have. And then they go into our landfills and they're full of caustic substances. So I'm not saying that there's not a need for some solar panels, but we don't need whole solar farms. We don't need whole wind farms. And there's vastly better technologies for EVs than batteries. And right now there's a new battery coming out, a solid state battery that's being released by Samsung. And I'm just going to say what I really believe in my heart. I hope that the people of the world will wake up and not embrace that battery, because it requires massive amounts of silver, far more than the lithium batteries. The answer is in rare earth. The answer is in making permanent magnets. The answer is in running our cars and having a battery, a magnet that lasts 300 years, that is truly off of the grid, that there's no carbon associated with it all. That technology exists, and we could get it. And so if you go down to the next slide, you'll see, we'll get into this in a little bit deeper, but I want to give you another chance to comment before I go on.
No, continue on.
All right, so here's some facts. Basically, all of those suppressed patents. So we go back and we look at those batteries. What you see up there in that green in that upper picture, that's the batteries that run an EV. And what we really know from history, this is coming from a documentary called The Lost Century. 1921, Nikola Tesla's Pierce Arrow automobile ran on free energy from the air. Bam. We don't need those batteries. And then in 1987, there was a device the size of a pack of cigarettes that was capable of running an electric car with energy from the vacuum. So those technologies are there, they're real, and we're going to get access to them. And we need to get out from under the pollution and the wasting of our assets with EV batteries. And that's going down. Dependency on fossil fuels is a lie from the pit of hell. So we're going to have all kinds of technologies that are to come out. And the fact is that the planet depends on access to free energy. We're going to get it. It's there, it's available, and we're going to get it. That's going to change the entire world. We're going to see that God never made a planet that had any shortcomings at all as far as natural resources are concerned. It's a planet of abundance, but our rulers have placed us into an economic system where everything is controlled and where we live in lack constantly and perpetually. That's not going to happen. Let's go on down and we'll dig into solar panels just a little more. I've given you a picture. Look at that mound of discarded solar panels. Look at that field that could be used to grow crops. I mean, basically, it's unbelievable. I'm going to read this one real quick. Highly inefficient. That's the solar panels. About 30% efficiency and are blocked from the market. Anything above 30% efficiency is blocked from the market. Loses 60% of the energy that it gets in transmission. It's land intensive, due to weather damage, ecological hazard when it goes into landfills. So basically, there's so many things wrong with this technology. I'm not saying that it doesn't have a role, but it doesn't have a role as solar farms. It doesn't have a role of being a power plant for a country or for a state. Let's go on down to the next slide, and you go to wind, and the same thing. My son lives in Texas, and a few years ago they had a winter storm, and they lost all their power, and basically they were down for weeks. So wind only works in certain locations, and these windmills, we find that they're highly susceptible to damage. They catch fire, they fall down, they kill birds, they kill marine life. They're basically the most inefficient, most costly forms of energy we could possibly have. For the interim, for the short term, Trump has said, drill, baby, drill. We're going to have to wake up and we're going to be dependent on oil for a while. But these new technologies are going to roll out, and we're going to transition into virtually free, clean, non-polluting energy that lasts virtually forever. It's going to change the world. When we get out from under the slavery of the oil industry, where it makes things so expensive that we can't afford them, we're going to find that the cost of everything is going to drop by probably 50% or more, because the central cost of everything you've ever bought, an automobile, a house, anything, is the energy it takes to mine whatever resources they need, to manufacture, to transport it. And that's all going to change as we go to God's economic system and we get access to free, clean, reusable energy. Comments before we go on, Meri?
No, but I've been in California. I know there's a lot of people that have gotten solar panels because of the sun. We have a lot of sun here, more than probably any other state in the country. So there's a lot of people that have had solar panels. They've been effective from that standpoint here in California. And I know a lot of people have been given incentives for purchasing solar. But, you're talking in a long-term thing, objectively, for the world. And so, we know that God has, probably better ways of doing things, as you just mentioned. So let's continue on.
Well, let's go back to what you said. Let's go back to California. Remember a couple of years, they had a heat wave a couple of years ago, and they had put mandates in to force people into getting EVs. What did they say? You can't plug them in. You'll bring the grid down. And that's with the small amount of adoption that we have for solar and for EVs. We can't run the world on those technologies. We just can't do it. The grid can't handle it. It's too expensive, and it pollutes like holy heck. So let's go on down to the next slide. And basically all I want to say here is that we're going to go into an ecological stewardship where we, the people, understand what has to be done to save God's planet. And that's what this is all about. I'm not going to go into detail on that. I want to transition into something else. So let's go on to the next slide. And this one I want people to understand. The enemy's in-game agenda is to kill us all, because they believe we're using too many of their natural resources. And every government in the world is controlled right now, or has been, by the global financial elite. And we have no sovereignty because we're all under the global banking system. That is all about to change. And they want to kill us because they think we're useless eaters consuming their resources. So that has everything to do with the technologies that I'm talking about, where we get free, clean energy, and we're not connected to the grid, and we're basically able to regreen this planet. These next two slides are the most important 2 slides in this whole presentation. I might encourage you to take a snapshot of them. Here's what I want people to understand. We're basically going through a period where the dollar is being de-dollarized, so that we're no longer going to be the sole reserve currency. But here's what I want people to understand, that China is trying to woo you into their economic system. But what it is right out there in front of you to see. It is the implementation of the beast system of the enemy. And they've already adopted it. They have 5G facial recognition cameras everywhere in China. Anywhere you go, you're basically being tracked. And when you go to the internet, bots are tracking you and they're looking for anything you say. And basically, if you say anything that they don't like, then you basically get put on social credit score, that anybody who contacts you, their score drops. And eventually, if it gets bad enough, then you can't move, you can't get on a train, you can't get on a plane, you can't leave the country, you can't have a job. Basically, it's the beast system where you cannot buy and you cannot sell. And then what triggers all of that is they trigger it by programmable currency. So they want a central bank digital currency. Look in the middle up there. And what that means is that they can control that currency so that they can say, if you don't spend the money that you get within, say, a month, then it disappears. It just disappears. So it's nothing more than a credit, and they're setting it so you can't save. So you're constantly dependent upon the government, and with the social credit score, if they trigger you, you literally will be unable to eat. You're just completely ostracized from society. And then they can do it for an individual. So if they can do it, they can determine what anybody in the nation can buy and sell, but they can target an individual and basically put them into abject poverty. That's not the system that the world wants to be under, but that is the system that is coming with China, that's already implemented. And that's why there's so much unrest in China right now. They're economically in trouble, and I think they're a powder keg waiting for a collapse, just like Iran and just like Venezuela. Comments before we go on?
Now we're going to see this wealth shift. Yeah, we do have to pray against this digital currency, because it would be, as you said, something they can manipulate where we'd be slaves again. And that's not what God wants. So continue on, as we almost end the show.
What Trump is saying is he's passed legislation saying that we're not going to have a central bank digital currency. And the history behind what we're doing and what they're doing is 10 years ago, who was mining most of the Bitcoin in the world? China. But Bitcoin is what? Bitcoin is decentralized. They can't have their central bank digital currency. So they gave that up, and Donald Trump seized it and said America is going to be the crypto capital of the world. So what Trump is doing is making a soft collapse, going to back the dollar by a stable coin backed by gold to give confidence in the dollar again. And then we're going to become the world's reserve currency, or one of them. And we're going to basically be able to draw in about 2 billion people, because on top of that, if we are the crypto leader of the world, you've got Africa and large parts of India and large parts of China that are unbanked. And if they trust us more than they trust that beast system from China, and if we are convenient because we're the crypto capital of the world, then basically that trade, that business is going to come to the United States of America. So Trump's system is going to free people. It's going to give them engagement in the banking system without being slaves. And the Chinese system is going to utterly release the beast system upon the world. So folks, those 2 slides are very, very important. And it gives you a choice. And the choice is freedom or slavery. So be aware of what's going on. So we go on down?
Yes, let's keep going.
All right, now we're going to shift gear after this next slide, and we're going to real quickly run through some information on about what this financial reset means to you. But to go off of those last 2 slides, here's what I have to say. America is not going to be the sole leader of the world, but it's going to be the moral leader. It's going to be a financial leader, and nobody in the world can check every box that I've got up on here. A free society. The world is going to want to do business with a free society that they can trust. Diverse and abundant natural resources. If you don't have that, if you have water shortages or silver shortages, you can't lead the world. You're in economic turmoil all the time. Diverse and innovative economy, that's America. Leadership in manufacturing and trade, that's America. Energy and food independence, that's America. Look at the Middle East. They have no water. We ship food to 100 nations around the world. Demographics as it relates to the GDP, we have a fairly young group of people. And if you look at Japan and you look at China, they have some of the oldest populations in the world. Those are real problems for the GDP of a nation because those people are not contributing. They are now dependent upon the government. We go on down global language. We've never had a situation where we had a ruler of the nation that didn't control that portion of the world or the whole world and have a common language and strong military. And you see what Trump is doing now. He's not taking us into these wars that are orchestrated as false flag events to drain us through perpetual war. When we went into 2008, Bush stood up and said to the American people, we're going to war and it's going to be a generation of war lasting 30 years or more. Where Trump says, I'm going in, I'm going out, I'm getting the guy and I'm coming back and everything's going to change. So there's the choice. The choice is between the beast system. The choice is between a system that gives you economic freedom, and the choice is to live under communism and under ironclad rule, or to live under a nation that has surrendered to God and that will give you freedom and prosperity. Comments before we go on?
No, let's go. Let's keep going.
Here we go. I normally do this as 2 shows. So this basically is, think of it as a total transition. This is why I say the transfer of wealth happened on Christmas. Basically, metals have been shooting up. I mean, they've gone through the roof, both silver and gold, and that constitutes a transfer of wealth. Because if you bought silver and gold, you just have to wait till the opportune time and sell it. And there's going to be people out there who are going to buy a house with silver, going to buy a house with gold, going to create generational wealth. And then copper is the same thing. And so now we're going to go through a little analysis of, well, how do you steward this wealth when it comes to you? Donald Trump has told us gold's going to go to $20,000. Well, when that happens, the upside to gold is going to be capped. And so you might, if you wait too long, have a hard time getting out of gold. It's going to be less liquid than silver. So in another slide, I've got a number of indicators as to when you might want to get out of silver, and you do it gradually. You don't get out of it all at one time. So basically, silver is semi-liquid. Copper is semi-liquid. So there's your precious metals, and those are all what God says, the gold and silver are mine. And so let's go on down. Oh, there was another topic. Oh, go ahead. That's all right. Going down to the next one. So basically, here's a little history for you. The government knows that silver and other strategic metals are crucially important. So sometimes they confiscate them. So under executive order, the president in 1933 confiscated gold, and in 34 they confiscated silver. And here's what's happening. As we get to a point where it is absolutely recognized as a strategically significant metal, they may take silver back. So here's what you need to do. I'm giving you a little heads up. The government tracks your transactions to a far greater degree than you think. If you've done a transaction to buy silver metals with a major dealer, they know about it. If you wired currency to a dealer, they know about it. If you've got a safety deposit box, they know about it. If you've got imports from abroad, they know about it. If the government tracks you on a digital footprint, so if you're just out talking on your computer, they know what you've got. So you need to understand that we need to be savvy in terms of what's going on. We'll get into what that means in a minute. Let's go on down to the next slide. This one, I would encourage you to take a snapshot of. The next slide. This is your strategy for exiting. So this is what you need to do. I'm going to read every one of these so I can make it as clear as I can. Indicators that price may be topping out. So here we go. When people stop selling gold, because gold is going to be higher, to buy silver, because silver is volatile, going up and down, then you want to say, well, maybe I want to get out of some of my silver. And if you do get out of it, I got to stop and make a caveat. This is all coming from my study of history and economics. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm kind of telling you what I've done. I'm telling you what my financial investment strategy is, but don't look at me as a financial advisor. I'm just looking at trends, and I'm just telling you what I've done. So basically, I'm looking to see that when people start getting out of gold and buying silver, they stop getting out of gold and buying silver, then that's something you should be looking at. And when you do sell your first silver, what I do or will do is I will take whatever I put in. Let's say I put $10,000 in. I'll sell enough to get my money back. So from that point forward, anything is all profit. So that's the first recommendation. The second is after the COMEX declares force majeure, we're going to get price clarity. And that means that basically the banks are going to start falling. That's going to be a tumultuous time. So you want to basically kind of wait till you do anything really significant until that comes in. That's going to happen towards the end of the first quarter. And that's going down. Likely when gold and silver ratio becomes 30-1, it's been as high as 80-1, then that's an indication that silver is beginning to plateau. And you want to look and see, is it still going steadily up or is it flattened off? And if it is, then you might want to do an assessment. Is now silver slowed down enough that there might be another investment that's better, and you want to get out of some more silver and put it over? Maybe this is favorite stock. If you're one of the most important companies in the world, basically took a 60% drop, and maybe you think it's time that you can make a lot of money off of buying that stock. I don't know what you're going to do, and determine at what point it makes sense to sell some of your silver and invest in other assets. So you do, when you sell, the same thing you do when you invest. You cost average in, you cost average out. You don't sell everything all at one time. You give it time. You let it age, and you take it out at these trigger points that I'm talking about, and keep some of your silver and ride the market to the very end, because basically I think it's going to go up a lot higher than people think. And I'll give you a little story here. JP Morgan has been the entity in the world that has most suppressed silver. They've held it down every time anybody tried to raise it. They've gone out and done paper contracts and held it down. Well, they just did something that tells you what's going on. There's all kinds of people out there saying silver's at the top, it's not going any higher. Well, just last month, when silver was around the $60 mark, JP Morgan got on all the paper contracts, and they bought $22 billion worth of silver in the 60s. So that tells me that the bank that has controlled silver and kept its foot on its neck is now understanding that silver is going to go through the roof. So just understand, if you have a reasonable amount, you might buy a whole house with your silver holdings. The transfer of wealth has already happened. It's just not time to check out, not time to go to the checkout counter yet. And let's go down. Watch for signs that the government's squeezing the public out. And so what I think that's going to be is this is more sophisticated than in 1933 and 34. I don't think the government's going to come in and seize our silver. I think they're going to come in and they're going to put taxes on it and other things that are going to make you say, well, now it's time to get out of silver and go into something else. So let me give you an opportunity to comment before we go on, and the rest of these slides are going to go pretty fast.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, I know it's on a different subject, but the dinar, I know there's a lot of people I know that have dinar. Before we end the show today, I want to briefly talk about the dinar too.
Let's skip it for now, because I've got 2 slides that will specifically answer your question.
Yes.
So action steps. One of the things you might know is that in legislation that's on the books right now, if you hold silver that you think has numismatic value, get it certified, because they're not going to take silver that is numismatic. And if you want to protect yourself, remember this: the government knows where all of your holdings. If you want to protect yourself against something happening in the United States, get storage offshore. Gold is not likely to be confiscated because it is not critical to the green scam subjugation. So there's just some other heads up for you. Let's go on down, and guess what? We're going to get into the currencies, just like you asked. So let's go to the next slide. And here are the things that you're going to be looking for as far as the reset on the dong and on the dinar. And it's my analysis that both of those nations are now stable. And from a national viewpoint, looking at them, there's no reason other than political reasons that they shouldn't be on the COMEX and shouldn't be revalued. So they basically are stable, growing economies. They're getting massive amounts of manufacturing coming from manufacturing leaving China and going to other nations that are in the Asian sphere of influence. And so they've got reserve assets. They're not deep in debt. They have stable governments. They have no current military conflicts occurring. They have natural resources in abundance. They have adequate infrastructure, meaning they have factories and all the infrastructure you need in order to be able to ship. They have a substantial domestic and international market, and their currencies are grossly undervalued, which gives them an advantage in trade. And that's why Trump is trying to basically lower the value of the dollar. And they have plenty of food and plenty of water. So they are stable economies that basically should be trading at a much higher price. And so both, in my opinion, both the Vietnam dong and the Iraqi dinar are just about ready to reset. Now, let's go on down and let's talk about the dinar right now. So something is happening. And for this to happen, I said there was a governmental component, and that governmental component is that there has to be political stability. So what's happening in Iran? Iran is the big brother to Iraq, and they have their foot on their economic system to a degree. So now it looks like that it is imminently falling. Iran is falling, and as Iran falls, that could present the opportunity for the dinar to revalue. I don't know if it's going to happen immediately, but I think that by the middle of the year, for sure, it's going to have re-triggered. There's nothing except political posturing that should keep either one of those currencies from revaluing. Let's go on down, and we'll give you a little bit of an idea of if you want to invest in it, how you can do it, and how much it's going to cost you. So if we go to the next slide, this one comes up, and we're talking about the dinar. And the last time I bought dinar, it was a few months ago. It was $763 for $1 million dinar, and you can buy it in a currency exchange. Some banks sell it, but you're gonna have to let your fingers do the walking. And if it's still available, I got mine at X Exchange, exchangeofamerica.com. And so you can go there, and they're saying that, well, some people are saying that it might revalue as much as 7 to 1, but the number that I've heard most recently that makes more sense is 4 to 1. And why does that make sense? Because before we bombed Iraq into oblivion, they have lots of oil, lots of gold, lots of natural resources. Their currency was 3 times more valuable than ours. In other words, it took $3 to buy 1 dinar. And now they're shipping oil out, and it's not as raw as crude oil anymore. It's refined oil. They have got their infrastructure in place, and they are ready to join the first world nations of the world. So that's the dinar. Let's go on down to the dong. And the dong is cheaper. It's $60, at least it was when I bought it, for $1 million. Now, if you buy, that's what I got at a bank. If you go to a currency exchange, it's probably going to be more like $80. But you can also get it on exchangeofamerica.com. And so this is another opportunity. The number of people that I hear talking are saying it's likely to value 2 to 1. So there's 2 economies that are now stabilized, that were absolutely decimated in wars, that are now positioned to be first-ranked nations. And so I think that those are going to revalue very soon. But I think that the dust has to settle on the political shuffling that's going on with Venezuela and with Iraq and with the Ukraine war. So what is Donald Trump doing to have an economic system that's stable? We have to end the wars, and he's doing everything he can to end the war so we can have economic stability around the world, and that will finish off the transfer of wealth. Now, this next slide, I want to be very careful about. This is something I put up here because there's lots of prophets that are saying God doesn't want to leave anybody behind. If you don't have money for gold or silver or for the currencies or anything else, the prophets are saying that when money leaves the dollar and goes over into the crypto market, that those who have very little are going to cause a spike in Shiba Inu. It's going to go up, and then it's going to crash right back down again. So there's no logical reason to buy it other than if you believe that the prophets are correct, and I'll leave that between you and God. If you do, then there's an opportunity possibly where you might make a windfall if you invest something in Shiba Inu. And if you do, what you need to know is you need to get an account with Kraken, because Uphold and the other accounts don't let you get out from under it quickly. So you need to set a sell order at 3 or 4 different price ranges in order to be able to get in and out of it immediately, because it's going to be like a flash up and a flash down. But basically, just go do your homework and then pray on it, because this is nothing more than something that the prophets are saying they're hearing from God. So I want to leave, I don't care how little you have or how much you have, there's God has made provision for all of his children. Let's go on down, and we're almost done. Okay, this is basically what's going to happen to the American comeback. These are requirements for peace and prosperity around the world, with America leading the way. Sovereign currency, sovereign borders, honest elections. So that's the key to why Venezuela was so important, so we can understand the elections that have been stolen. Resource independence. That's why we have to have a new economic system that stewards God's natural resources. Manufacturing prowess. Trump has got commitments for $18 trillion for new factories moving into us. Regulatory clarity. He's removing those regulations that got in our way as fast as he can. And he's saying, if you'll build a factory over here worth $1 billion, I'll clear all the regulation roadblocks out of the way. Energy independence. And we're now remember, Venezuela has more confirmed oil reserves than any other nation in the world. As Trump said unabashedly, we're taking it. We built it and we're taking it. I just hope we give them a fair deal. And equitable trade agreements, global financial parity, and basically First and Second Amendment rights, and shared values and goals. All of those are things that America is getting back because of America's Make America Great policies under one Donald J. Trump. So when you get ready to go and vote in the midterms, take a snapshot of this and ask yourself, is Trump just talking about all these things, or are there tangible things he's been doing to make every one of those make you prosper and make America prosper and give peace and prosperity to the world? My answer is, and I'm going to do a whole show on this, he has addressed every one of these in a number of tangible ways. So let's go on, and we're just about ready to wrap it up. So I've had this up a long time. This book has been out, so I'm not going to say anything except to say that it is your guide to understanding what made America great. And let's go to the next slide, and I've got an announcement to make. Then we're done. So, coming soon, the new book. And the first book was called Liberty Crusade, Liberty Crusade, The Fight to Save the Free World. That's the battle we've been in. And I wrote this book 2 years ago, because God always gives me everything in advance, and I shelved it, and then I came back in and rewrote it all over again so that it's all up to date. But basically, I chose the name 2 years ago, Restoring the Republic. That's exactly where we're at right now. So this I want to comment on. These two books together give you something that's very important. If you need to know it for yourself, mom and dad, but you need to know it for your children, because basically our children have been brainwashed. So if you get these books, I purposely wrote it at about a 6th grade level. You can sit down and read this, and I'm going to ask you a question. How much control do you think you have over what your children think? I'm going to tell you that, in my opinion, it's very little, because the schools brainwash them, the media brainwashes, the games they play brainwashes, Disney brainwashes them. But in this book is the history of what made America great, the history of Christianity, and how God chose America to be one of his champion. And if you sit down and go through this book chapter by chapter, it's a very easy read. You will be the one who's in control of what your children think. You'll be inoculating them against the brainwashing from the global financial elite system. So with that, Meri, that's all I've got. Let's let you close this out.
Yes, thank you, Larry. Let's put us back up on the screen. Yeah, take out the slides. Thank you. Well, yeah, wow, that was longer than anticipated, but it was very good. I think we need to know this in particular with a lot of these different financial monetary systems that we can get involved in. I do have some dinar, I do have some dong, I do have silver, I do have some gold. But let me tell you, we've all been in this thing for the last several years, that we now have to be wise. And it says in James that if we lack wisdom, to ask of God. So Larry, thank you for coming on, and thank you for watching today. Please, follow or subscribe. I know that I recently got back up on YouTube. Please subscribe on my YouTube channel. Now is the time, Meri Crouley. And, I've been suppressed on Rumble. God bless Rumble. But all I can say is that as we continue to go, and as we continue to pray and stay and obey, we're going to see that the Lord's kingdoms are going to stay, and we're going to see that we are going to be everything that the Lord wanted us to be is free. It's all about freedom. And it's all about freedom. That's why it says Jesus came to the world to bring and make the captives free. Isaiah 61. So let's just pray, Larry, for people that are watching right now, because a lot of people think, well, I don't have any gold or silver or dinar or any of these other things. Well, let me tell you also, if you invest in God's kingdom, he said you can't outgive God. So I know many of you have sowed into different ministries, including mine. We thank you for that. We have to put our trust in the Lord and not into any of these other things, even though it does say to have wisdom. So, Lord, we thank you as we're beginning of the year. This is my first show of the year. I thank you, God, for the people watching. That, Lord, we will have the wisdom that we need, Lord, to know what to buy, to know what to sell, to know where to invest, to know when to give. Lord, we thank you for the wisdom of the Lord. And we thank you, Lord, that we are going to see this overthrow of these demonic systems that the enemy has set up, even when Jesus was in the desert fasting. And the enemy, Satan, came to him and said, I'll give you all of this if you will bow. And Jesus didn't deny that he had the power over the world system at the time. But Lord, we thank you that the control of the demonic realm now is being taken from his hands and being put into the hands of the just, as we trust and we must follow what you've called us to do for such a time as this. Have you called us to your kingdom? In Jesus' name, amen. Well, listen, thank you for coming
Before
up.
we go, I want to interject one other thing based on what you said. If you haven't got any money to invest any seed in the ground, I want you to know God has your back. So I want to tell you one last thing. Everybody's talking about something called Nasara and Gasara. I want you to understand, I don't care if you've got any seed in the ground, God has made provision for you. So what Nasara was a based on a lawsuit where the farmers sued the banks. It all went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they made the contention that the bankers were taking their farms in the Depression. Basically, they had to go out and borrow money to get tractors. The Industrial Revolution was going on, and what they contended was, we put our labor into this, we put our land up, that's our collateral. The banks had no collateral. It was like we were talking before. It was money printed from nothing. And so the Supreme Court said that those contracts were null and void. And they weren't able to, at some point they interceded, and those farmers got to keep their land. That's Nasara. That's coming. And I've done whole shows on that, and we can go back after we do the banking thing. We can go in deep into Nasara. But I don't care what you've done. Donald Trump is saying we're going to go from the Internal Revenue Service to the External Revenue Service. Depending on your tax bracket, that's 20 or 30% back in your pocket. We're going to get free energy. That's going to cut the cost of everything you buy by 30, 40, 50%. And then we're going to get rebates back from money that was taken from us that was illegal. And so I want to tell you, none of you are going to be in poverty. The whole world is going to be lifted up into relative economic parity. And so that's the good news.
Yes.
Oh, and one last thing. You can also follow me on Rumble and on YouTube, and my channel is Liberty Crusade Official. And I'm on 3 days a week.
Yes. Great. Well, thank you, Larry. And also, if you'd like to make a donation to my ministry, we're actually doing many things around the country with my film, Ashley Freedom Cry. It's educating people about what happens in America with sex trafficking. But we're actually building a studio here called Destiny to rival Disney. But now you have to understand, the biggest battle has been for the minds and the souls of people, and they controlled the narrative for a long time. And in many ways, they still have, but slowly that is changing. And so if you make a contribution to my ministry, mericrowley.com, it literally goes into my ministry. I've had a nonprofit for the last 25 years. So you can go to mericrowley.com or click on the link below, make a contribution, or become a monthly partner. You can become a monthly partner on Patreon, patreon.com/Meri Crouley. And, there's different gifts and things you'll receive by becoming a monthly partner for as little as $5 a month. But some people are giving, quite a bit. But whatever amount you choose, God will bless you for being part of the ministry. So listen, thanks for watching. Happy New Year. I'm so excited, Larry, about the best is yet to come. And please be looking for the 8th Open the Heavens in Las Vegas in May. We'll let you know. We should have the exact venue. The projected date is May 1st and 2nd. So God bless you all. Now is the time. See you soon. God bless.
Bye-bye.